Okay, hi everyone. Welcome back. I hope you enjoyed your break and you're ready for the next session at CALC 25. So for our next session, we've got Twanna and Abigail, who are going to be presenting a 60-minute session, Librarianship in the Mirror, reflecting on our complicities. Take it away.
Just making sure I unmuted myself despite the fact we've been going through doing this for quite some time. Twanna, well, thank you so much for attending our session and our presentation. I know Twanna and I are both really excited about presenting on this. Not trying to find the right word. It's a great discussion presentation. Ours is called Librarianship in the Mirror, which is it's not a pun, but it's maybe somebody gets it, reflecting on our complicities. So this is more, this presentation is very much, since this is critical approaches to libraries, looking at ourselves and looking at librarianship, library work, library workers, the work that we do, and looking at it with critical thinking and with a critical mindset. I can go ahead and introduce myself. My name is Dr. Abigail Phillips, or Abigail, or Abby, she, her. I'm an assistant professor, hopefully soon, in a month or two, associate professor at the School of Information Studies in the University of Wisconsin-Milwaukee, in the US, so firmly in the Midwest. And I'm happy to be here at Twanna.
Hi, y'all. My name is Twanna Hodge, pronoun she, her, hers. I'm a third-year PhD student at the University of Maryland, College Park. Apologies, this morning has been very erratic, but you will almost see me in about a minute or two. I found a place to do this presentation. But yeah, I'm excited to be here.
Yeah, just take the time you need. Oh, why do we always? So, I love good outlines for our presentation. Just briefly what we're going to go over. First, our access acknowledgement, which we borrowed, but we found inspiration from Dr. Christine Muller, who I know that they have a presentation coming up that I'm excited for. And we're going to do our little more in-depth introduction, positionality statements, framework questions, our frameworks that we're using, system structure. So we're going to go over a couple of things, and we're also going to get feedback from you all, or just thoughts, because we want to know what you have to say too, since this is a critical thinking kind of back and forth thing. And naturally, references or recommended readings, questions, and how to reach us.
Okay, so the access acknowledgement is me. So thank you so much to Dr. Christine Moyer. I highly recommend going to their presentation afterwards, acknowledging that everyone has needs. Think about how to care for your needs in the space, such as fidgeting, stimming, stepping out as needed. As presenters, we may ask for questions to be repeated. I may need time to process questions before answering. Also, the presenters reserve the right to fidget or stim today. We also ask that you exhibit care for one another and the presenters in our spiritual space. And a little thing that I added is that painful and sensitive topics are part of this presentation. So take care of yourself.
Wonderful. So Twanna, would you like to go first, or I'm already talking. Why not? So, again, Abigail Phillips, Abby, she, her pronouns. I was very excited. I'm happy that Twanna brought this into our presentation from. I do this religiously in my presentations and papers to write anything. I'm a white, queer, cisgender, disabled woman. I'm born and raised from Southwest Georgia, very rural, grew up working class, trailer park trash kid. I have a number of intersections with my mental health, but also recently diagnosed with autism, but I also previously with ADHD, which that's learning that way. Mental health advocate and self-advocate, and researcher and writer, and just a human being in this world trying to balance being disabled and neurodivergent in our world. Twanna.
Hello, everyone. Hi. So my name is Twanna Hodge again. I am an Afro-Caribbean cisgender woman. I consider myself disabled. I'm a first-generation American, so birthright citizenship, born and raised on the island of St. Thomas. I am a mental health advocate and researcher, and I used to be an academic librarian for 7 years before I pivoted to become a PhD student.
Oh, I always forget. I was a public librarian before I decided to get the PhD. What am stop doing. Okay, so we're going to talk about the two key frameworks for that's behind this this presentation, behind the work that we're doing right now. Trauma-informed approach, or trauma-informed care, trauma-informed librarianship. But these are 6 of the concepts within trauma and guidance for trauma-informed and a trauma-informed approach, from the Substance Abuse Mental Health Association within the United States. So first, safety, trustworthiness and transparency, peer support, collaboration and mutuality, empowerment, voice and choice, cultural, historical, and gender issues. I've created a course about trauma-informed librarianship. So it's so exciting to see more and more trauma-informed discussions and our role in it, and balancing how we take care of ourselves while they're caring for others in a capacity that's comfortable for us. And also critical race theory. Racism has been and continues to be epidemic and normalized through systems. Case in point, libraries, institution. Did I take this over for you?
Yeah, but
you keep going. I was just gonna be like institutions, like libraries and
something else to add into critical race theory is that there are several tenets to it, but a lot of it is around how racism is endemic, and it's normal. It's a part of a lot of our systems and structures, and we're going to go into that in a little bit and how that is manifest. But also one of the tenets of critical race theory is counter narrative and counter storytelling. So being able to push back against the dominant narratives about, like, what it means to be human, what we see as normal, or as common. So with that, I will talk about the systems and structures and institutions that exist. So next slide. Okay, so a lot of you all might be familiar with these isms and phobias. So like racism, sexism, classism, sizeism, ableism, ethnocentrism, anti-Semitism, ageism, colorisms, and phobias. So homophobia, Islamophobia, xenophobia, transphobia, queerphobia, and like anti-indigeneity, misogyny, and also misogynoir, anti-Blackness, and anti-immigration. Now, recognizing that this is an incomplete list, and so for those who have access to the chat box, feel free to put in things that we did not capture or might have missed. And so the thing is that acknowledging that libraries are a reflection of the society that they live in. Okay, so libraries, librarianship, archives, museums, galleries do not operate outside of these systems and structures. And so, for me, in my time, even from when I started my MLIS program 12 years ago, I was one of 2 Black students in my cohort, my residential cohort of 60. And this was at the University of Washington, the MLIS program. And so since then, like I've been either the only one, or one of few in either spaces or programs. Even in my doctoral degree, in my cohort, I was one of 3 Black students, but the only Black female student in my PhD cohort. And so Dr. Kimberly Crenshaw has this theory called intersectionality. And so it's the intersecting of different oppressed identities. So for me, in my case, I have racism, sexism, ableism, sizeism, colorism, ageism. And so even though I may look young, and even though I do have the title student, even when I was an academic librarian, there was this perception that I was a student and that students had less power. And then as we see within the US and what's happening globally, that xenophobia has been on the rise, as well as anti-immigration. So these are several things, and we've seen how it has manifest in our libraries in different ways. And so let me look into the chat box to see if there was any other, let's see, organize a symposium, trauma-informed care. It is I'm glad that there's a lot of push and research that's going into trauma-informed care. And like how I like to summarize it is more so instead of saying what's wrong with you, looking at it as like what happened to you and acknowledging like the COVID-19 pandemic and so many things. We've all been through collective traumas that is just added on to these existing systems and structures. And so with that, next slide, because we do have a little bit of audience engagement here for you all today.
Yes, I do not know what I did with my sharing. I was trying to give you a sharing privilege, and I think something went amiss. Come back, Abby. You can do this.
Even though we are in the wonderful year of 2025, technology still doesn't seem to be our best friend.
I'll resume. Oh, yeah, okay.
So I put into the chat box and the next screen a link to Menti. So Menti is an anonymous polling software. We're not going to know who ascribes anything that they share to whom in this space, but we wanted to take an opportunity for folks who might feel more comfortable to share their thoughts. And thinking about what are some examples of isms and phobias in librarianship. I could think of a number of examples, but I'm curious to know for those who are in the audience, what are either some current or historical examples of the isms that were previously listed that you've seen in librarianship? Switch to share my screen. Okay, hopefully everyone can see my screen. Oh, Abby, if you're talking, you were muted. Okay. So transphobia, sexism, ableism, racism, classism a lot. So there's this sense of elitist, words are hard, elitism, there we go, that exists. Biphobia, okay, that's one that I did not have on the list, so thank you. Library management refusing to, in Facebook protests. Oh. That is unfortunate that has happened. There's also taken into consideration when it comes to health, as well. When during the pandemic, that a lot of people were forced to return to work or was forced to share aspects of themselves that they weren't ready to share. Racism, all of them, transphobia, and so from the audience participation, we can see that these isms and phobias are not something of the past. It's not something where we are in this, age of equality, and that we are, somehow in this utopia where libraries is for everyone. Libraries haven't been for everyone. There's been times that libraries have essentially said it's, during segregation, during moments of unrest, there's a lot of times where things were not available to everyone. Now, librarianship is shifting. Now, classism, so somebody is this more of a thing in the UK than the US? Classism is very, it's in the US. Somebody mentioned white fragility, xenophobia, elitism, classism, and racism. And so like we have, and some of these things exist in tandem with one another as well. I see some things in the chat. Just want to make sure that I don't miss anything. Okay. All right. And so with that, I'm going to stop sharing.
I'm trying to think of the word when we were talking about, because one popped into my head that I experienced so much getting into academia, because I'm from the South and I had a prominent accent, and I taught myself, to kind of code switching to push that down because it doesn't sound professional. And so like what that ism for, I guess that would fall into classism to a certain extent, where you have to, the way you sound impacts how people judge you. But I don't know if there's an ism for that you know of, Twanna. I'm just curious. Okay, so perceptions of librarianship, and this is our own perceptions of librarianship, library work, how we view our profession, a calling, a very very religious overtones. And I've heard so many students, and when I worked in the library, that they were called to do this work, or they always wanted to work in a library because they felt that they needed to do it. And it was something internal that was speaking to them. An identity. For myself, it was hard when I left public libraries, to separate myself from, I'm a librarian and I represent the library wherever I go, the grocery store. So it becomes an identity and who defines who you are. Self-sacrifice, particularly with COVID, I think this became very evident. Sacrificing your health, your physical health, mental health, sacrificing so much of yourself to help the community, to help patrons, to serve, to do everything to most capacity that you can, even beyond your capacity. And also a sort of a savior role. The idea that I've heard in maybe Twanna's experienced this as an academic librarian, but I can help, I can solve this problem. I'm good at like a reference question, or even just at the public library trying to find resources or help somebody with a resume. Like I can solve all, I can do it all. I will help them and I will be there, and not quite a savior as in with the whole religious, but to me, it seemed very clear that we wanted to take, I took on that role of, I'm going to be the person in their life that helps them make this resume or finds this job. And also, this isn't just librarianship or libraries, part of the family. Red flag. I see it in emails and in academia, definitely from our chancellor, and but a lot in the library. We're part of the family, or this is your family. Personally, no. You're my coworkers. I have a family, a chosen family, and also my own family. And the idea of being a part of the family allows them to abuse you or take advantage of you and demand so much. And the quote that I heard a lot, we don't go into this work for the money. No, but you kind of need money to pay for rent, food, medical expenses, taking care of your family. But so these are just some that popped into my mind and that I've heard again and again in public libraries, especially. And turn it over to Twanna. Or was I?
Oh, no, you're totally on point, Abby. And I will also add that part of a family, anytime I hear that, I'm like, I have family members that I don't talk to. So are you saying like if we are part of a family at work that I cannot talk to certain people? Okay. And so
Excellent
also
point.
and also recognizing that there's a lot of power dynamics that is a part of, you know, librarianship, working, you know, between a supervisor, supervisee, things of that nature. And so there's also this thing that we also have to take into account. So like vocational awe, which kind of captures like it's a calling and like we have to be self-sacrificial and things of that nature. It's like one thing to go above and beyond for patrons, because we have seen that, you know, libraries, we do so much good and we have been doing so for like decades and centuries, but also acknowledging that like, you know, and it is Fabazi Ata that coined vocational awe and written a fabulous article in the Library with a Lead Pipe several years ago. But it's also being like librarianship is not above reproach. It can be critiqued. Like I love librarianship. Like I knew from middle school that I wanted to become a librarian. Okay. Which is very uh atypical for somebody growing up on an island. But for me, I knew, but like one of the things people told me was that they don't make enough money. You know, like they didn't know you had to get a master's degree, all of these type of things. And for me, like I dedicated a lot of time and energy and effort into librarianship. I still love it, but also acknowledging that there are some legacy and current contemporary issues. De-authenticity, um, uh, Katrina Davis Kendrick wrote a really fabulous article and done a lot of work also around low morale. So if you have not read her work, I highly suggest you do so. And so de-authentication is basically having to peel off aspects of yourself. So some people had mentioned before, even you, Abby, talking about like accents and dialects. And so having to code switch. And so like one thing I did, because I knew I was going to move to the mainland, after undergrad, was that I took a voice and diction class, because I knew that growing up in St. Thomas, we speak Virgin Islands Creole. I had a very thick accent, and I did not want people to be so focused on it that it would be an issue in communication. But I also thought that Virgin Islands Creole was broken English. It was backwards. Made me sound unintelligent. And so you know, for me, if learning how to speak standard or proper English meant losing an aspect of myself. And so I've kind of we since claimed that, but it is challenging when, in order to sound a certain way, to be seen as professional, and even thinking about who gets to decide who is professional and who isn't. And then the glass cliff. So people probably have heard of the glass ceiling, but the glass cliff is this concept. I forgot who was coined by. I believe it's in our recommended readings. But it's essentially putting marginalized people in precarious interim leadership positions that doesn't necessarily, like, if they do a great job, they don't get like the credit for it, and if they do a bad job, it's attributed to them. And so these are some of the things that we have either experienced, we've read in the literature, we have heard other people have experienced. And so with that, I'm going to take us back to Mentimeter to talk about anything else to add about the perceptions of librarianship. Someone says small town library were treated as neighbors rather than workers. It leads to familiar behaviors and expectation. Not able to have like that kind of work boundary. That is something I encountered when I went back home to St. Thomas, because it's a very small place. I worked at UVI and I was a student worker there. And so there was a lot of issues had to navigate in that regards.
I also have worked in I've worked in a lot of small rural libraries in the South, and that is very much, it becomes a neighbor. You know, everybody's knows your name. You know people's business. You got to ask where you go to church, and it's a lot.
Yeah. And there's certain things that librarianship cannot prepare us for. You will probably have like seen the presentations, done them, have your own like list of things that librarianship can prepare you for. That is also acknowledging like taking things into context, and a lot of things are situational as well. Whereas like operating in a public library in a rural town is not the same as an urban library in, say, Seattle or Los Angeles. Libraries are bastions of higher values. We have the same stratification of issues that exists within society. We're founded on discriminatory principle. Information service, corporate library. Yep, I think this takes away from the equitable nature of libraries and sanitizes the service. Some people believe librarians are meant to look like old bookworms. Never had it quite, like that, but yeah, I've been told I don't look like.
When I was at the front desk, the circulation desk at public library, a man came over to the desk and said, seemed like a hit on, but you don't look like a librarian. I would have gone to the library more if they looked like you. Yeah, so the stereotype is still so, and that was creepy, but
yeah. I've been, when I tell people I'm a librarian, the looks of shock that I get, and also like I don't. So it's also like the perceptions, like how librarians should look and how they should act, and that like so that's also another aspect. And I appreciate everyone for dropping a lot of really amazing links and resources there. Somebody mentioned the sexy librarian trope. Yes, and we've seen that throughout like films and movies as well. Libraries can be the social safety net that society, governments are dismantling. We've seen that time and time again, and we're seeing it especially happening now. All you do is stamp books, you read all day. I have educated, okay, educated my family and friends and everyone about what I do as a librarian and the core things that we do. Besides, we're not a warehouse of books. We're focusing on providing necessary access to information. And we have seen how information literacy, health information literacy, all of the literacies you can think of, it's been under attack, and it's continuing to be under attack. And that we are here to bring attention to that and to fight against that. And I will also say that one of the things that I've had to do more than my sister, who's a medical doctor, is to explain to people what librarianship is. Like, what do librarians do? That's the one thing that we as library workers have had to do, probably more so than anyone else, because they have these, perceptions of what we do. You can think of The Mummy. I am a librarian. You can think of Buffy the Vampire Slayer. You can think of like the Librarians, the movie and the TV show. Like you can think of other, pop references to what a librarian does, but for people not really understanding that what we do is more complex, and it becomes complex as time goes on. Let's see if there's anything else that I missed. Yeah, that libraries are safe, neutral spaces. Nope. Even though the reason for libraries and librarianship is very political, because we have corporations and institutions that would rather that we do not exist any longer. And so the fact that like we are providing books, databases, resources, teaching people how to use technology, that is not neutral and that is not apolitical. Okay. Now I'm going to stop sharing and move on to the next question.
You can do this. Sorry, I was randomly looked up that article because and I was like, oh no. Totally did. That's how great I am at this.
It is okay. We are not shooting for perfection.
I know. It makes me laugh that I say that to myself, like it doesn't exist, but I keep shooting for it.
And so these are white supremacy characteristics. So you might have heard of them, you might have seen this. This is not meant to be weaponized. This is not meant to be discriminatory towards, white people, whiteness, things of that nature, but it's to acknowledge that white supremacy characteristics is embedded into a lot of aspects of librarianship. And this is only two out of the several characteristics that exist. But these are the two that we felt that were particularly salient in regards to librarianship. So worship of the written word. So if it's not properly cited according to academic rules that many people don't know or have access to, it is not legitimate. So it could result in an inability to or refusal to acknowledge information that is shared through stories, embodied knowing, intuition, the wide range of ways that we individually and collectively learn and know. And so this could mean that, the emphasis on, as somebody said, they work in social anthropology and archaeology, discussions of around valid or legitimate knowledge are profound, and so even thinking about and questioning who gets to decide what is valid, what is legitimate, who is authoritative, who is credible. Because a lot of time I've had to like proven myself and my credentials and that I actually do have the knowledge and the expertise. There's this concept called presumed incompetence that is typically associated towards women of color, particularly in academia, as though they may not know as much as their white male counterparts. And there's a really great edited volume called Presumed Incompetence. And so even thinking about that, like it has to be written down, it has to be documented. Otherwise, it does not have any kind of credibility or legitimacy to it. And then a constant sense of urgency. Everything has to be done immediately, done right now, done perfectly. So it makes it difficult to take time to be inclusive, encourage democratic and thoughtful decision-making, to think and act long-term. So not just thinking about next 5 minutes, next 10 minutes, or a few weeks or few months, but think about years and generations ahead. And it reproduces an either or thinking because of the stated need to reach decisions quickly. And so a lot of the time we see, especially now that everything is happening. And so even with like the things that has been happening since 2025 began, is like this constant sense of urgency. And then you're constantly in a sense of uncertainty and fear, and that leads you to making decisions that may not be in your best interest, your community's best interest, your organization's best interest. And some people are saying in the chat that they, feeling the constant sense of urgency, and that everything has to be produced and immediately. And so that is one thing. And so with that, going to.
Oh, I was going to add one thing. I know we're short on time, but I just master's student. I'm on her thesis committee, and she just defended on Monday, but it within a different department, cultural rhetorics, and this plays a lot into talking about stories and how a communication is shaped by culture and shapes culture, and embodiment is talked about quite embodied knowledge. And I did not know that field, so I was learning more about cultural rhetorics and the worship of the written word instead of storytelling and stories. But go.
And so with that, these are our framework questions. And so what we are going to do now is to go through them one by one in Mentimeter, and to talk about, and one of the things that we can do is also share the Mentimeter results with the conference organizers, so then it could be shared with the presenters, not the presenters, with the participants. And so let me go ahead and share my screen. Okay, so how does one develop and maintain a critical mindset? So one of the biggest things for me is acknowledging that there's a lot of things that we have not been intentionally taught. So as part of my unlearning, is unlearning some of the things that I thought was truth and fact. And I question everything. Just like we were taught in library school to question the sources, to look for several sources, but even going deeper to be like, who created these sources, who funded this research, what was their agendas, what are their biases, because we all have biases. It's a natural human phenomena. So that's how I think about and develop a critical mindset, also acknowledging and thinking about when I'm in spaces where there's no one like me, whether it's my visible and invisible identities, why is this happening? Like, why am I the only one? So I will toss it to Abby to talk about she develops and maintain a critical mindset.
First, I saw the comment about being comfortable with being wrong and learning from that, the relearning or unlearning, and then learning, saying that I don't know, or I was wrong, just reflecting on myself like 10 years ago, things I was in the doc program and what I thought, I'm like, no, and I always encourage my students, it's going to happen, especially in like critical librarianship and trauma informed, just across the board, as with foundations, you're going to unlearn what you've been. It's natural, and it's okay, and that's actually really great. Yeah, you should be critically thinking. So when I think of a critical mindset, the idea that I'm learning new information and taking that in, and then looking at what I had thought for so long, and incorporating that, or change or adjusting what I know. I think that people are afraid of change, definitely, and also afraid of looking at themselves and where they could learn something new.
Yes. And so like having a critical mindset does not mean critiquing, like negatively critiquing yourself. Because sometimes people think critical and they think critique and they think negative. And so part of the thing is taking into account that when it's developing a critical mindset and maintaining one is understanding that everyone's experiences is not the same, and it's not going to be the same, that not everyone has the same access to resources, information, etc. And so people are coming from their own perspective. And then like a lot of the times I've had to recognize that I have to meet people where they are, either physically or intellectually, etc. And so some of the things people have said, collective study, collaboratively, developing a critical mindset does not happen in a vacuum. I have a lot of people who I trust, who I bounce a lot of things off of, who I ask certain questions of, like, explain a situation and be like, I feel like I went wrong here. Like, could you help me talk through the situation, etc. I am learning happens through discomfort. So if I'm not uncomfortable, if I'm not discomfortable, I am not truly learning. Now, there's a difference between being uncomfortable and experiencing discomfort and pain and suffering. So we're not saying to suffer and suffer needlessly. But it's to also understand that, you know, for some people, they've been unaware of the world that they've lived in, and some people have not had that ability to be unaware. And so somebody say integrate best practices. Consider, when is the last time certain policies have been updated? When is the last time that onboarding has been updated? And when is the last time people have come together and thought about, part of my other research is looking at grief and bereavement policies in academic health sciences libraries. And so there's so many things where it's like, just because it's been written and it's set, that's how it's supposed to be going down. Going forward, not going down. Without fear of judgment, and also being able to be called in and to call others out. So not in a negative thing to be like, oh, you said this, you're XYZ, you're racist, sexist, etc. But being able to say, like, acknowledging, I heard you say this, is this what you meant? Because I've done that to people before, because sometimes I might have misheard you, but also wanting to be like, do you understand what you said? And like the potential implications of that. Yes, these few people have added things to the chat box. Go ahead, Abby.
Oh, just for the best practice, that phrase has started to make me not uncomfortable, but well, what do we mean by best practice? And I believe you already said the best practices for whom? It's just a complicated idea of best practice. Best for who are we talking about? And also the comment about having a colleague, mentor, friend, and that's Twanna for me, without judgment, and also because of our we're both neurodivergent. We just, again, I cannot express how wonderful it is to feel seen by someone, because and to have someone I can brainstorm and just bounce ideas like we did last night. And I know Twanna sees me and and does not judge my rambles and the things I'm doing right now. But anyway, my two cents.
Likewise, Abby. Like, the thing is, having someone who acknowledges you for you is such an important thing, because human beings, we're social creatures, and also acknowledging that not everyone is for everyone too. So it's like there's a lot of risk, there's a lot of vulnerability in a lot of the things that we're seeing in developing a critical mindset, because there is institutions and people that would want you to conform, to stay the same, to assimilate to the existing system and structures, policies, laws, rules, and regulations. And what people have to understand is that it was legal to own people at one point in time across the globe. It was illegal to read, at another point in time for certain groups and populations. And so if we always abide by, like, what is the current legal precedents or adhere to that, we will not be where we are right now. And so acknowledging We're going to go by very quickly because we see it's 12 o'clock. And I know for some people, like they have to hop off or go prepare for another presentation. So very appreciative for the folks who have been able to like be with us, throughout the majority of this. And so developing a critical practice, I'm going to skip that because we did kind of touch on that a little bit. And so what does critical reflection entail? I love the concept of cultural humility, which is acknowledging that we don't know everything there is to know about other people's culture. And taking into account that we have to stop and reflect about these things. And so like there's things like when I talk about Virgin Island culture, so people ask me about the Virgin Islands, I have to take into consideration that both of my parents come from different Caribbean islands. And so there's certain things that I cannot fully talk about in regards to the Virgin Islands when people ask that question. Trying to figure out which question we're going to leave it on this question. Go ahead, Abby.
How has the profession othered library workers? Because we don't talk about that much. Not that because we had that discussion last night about othering and being othered and library workers and patrons, but
yes.
the need the pressure to conform and follows library best practices or what we're taught, and this is just how it's done and how it's always been done.
Yes. Unstable jobs, so precarious work situations, soft money, grant money. We've, also seen the lack of advocacy in lack of advocacy in a lot of different ways. The adherence to anti-DEI, anti-woke things that has shifted dramatically in the last, 2 to 3 years. We've also seen, somebody said hierarchical structure. A lot of people perception that librarianship is outdated, and that there's no more need for us. Google has everything. Everything is on Google. Saying people are unprofessional, but not explaining what unprofessional means, because I've been called unprofessional before, but without any explanation of like what exactly is unprofessional. Scope creep.
Well, especially dress. But what is professional to me? Yes. No explanation.
I mean, I could talk about hair, dress, mannerisms. Somebody said prizing qualifications. Expectation for female staff members to take on more traditional tasks. But also tasks such as what is also interesting is that even though that we're a highly female and feminized profession, there's still this high amount of men in leadership positions across the field. Okay. Let me see if there's anything else in the chat. Okay. All right. And then we're going to very quickly touch on the redistribution question, that I feel like that is a question that sometimes we don't get to talk about openly about, is how do we redistribute spaces and resources equitably? So equity is being able to tailor it to the individual person or communities, not, saying everything goes for everyone. They're going to get the same resources. So it's about tailoring it to the needs and the wants and the identities and the perspectives of that individual or that community. And so in terms of equity, because a lot of people think equity is equality and equality is fair distribution or equal distribution of resources, and that's not the same thing.
And it's not the same as just or
Mhm.
similar to fair.
Oh, lightning control. Oh, that would be so nice. I wish that there was the lightning control in spaces to help with sensory issues, because some like overstimulation is a thing. And you know, some people think that it's a simple, not a simple, it's like, what's the word I'm looking for? It's not something that is a big deal, but like for others it is. Is it time? It's been time. Like, see us afterwards for a planning on the revolution. I'm just joking. Make the implicit explicit. Eliminate fines. Oh, I would love that so much. What is other ways we can disseminate research rather than, yes, we really need to talk about the current scholarly communication model, because that is still very problematic. And it has been for quite some time. Stop requiring library cards to use resources, attend programs, funding, support for leadership development for people who actually want to make things better. Yes. Yep. Remove hidden knowledge. Yes. Yes. Remove hidden knowledge. Yes. That is a big thing. Resources for bridging language barriers. Yes. And the other thing is not assuming that we know everything there is to know about a population, and that we are able to provide, so kind of going into saviorism a little bit, and that we can provide them, that they need us, that we're providing them a service, like they need us in order for them to thrive or survive. And it's getting rid of that thinking and being like, this is a partnership. Like everything is connected. We are unlearning and taking any kind of perceptions that we have about groups and communities, and being able to come to them with a more open mind, even including us, like within our own profession. Because a lot of times we are patron focused and we somehow forget about ourselves and that we also need to cater to ourselves, and that like we still have to work on ourselves. Hence, like, you know, turning a mirror to us to understand like it starts with us and it ends with us too. So hidden knowledge, or the hidden curriculum. So it's things that might be inaccessible to certain people, either because, you know, and part of it is like information hoarding, but also part of it could be changing certain policies, procedures, requirements for people to either get tenure or to complete a task or things of that nature. And so like hidden knowledge, the hidden curriculum, information hoarding, a lot of these things does have implications. And also acknowledging just because somebody works in a library, feel in a library doesn't mean everyone is a social justice warrior, that everyone wants to make information accessible, that everyone does support diversity, equity, inclusion, that everyone does support social justice, because we've seen the censorship, the pushback, the different things people have done, not cataloging certain things or miscataloging things so people can't find it, you know, taking books off of the shelves, you know, before any edict or law or anything come to pass. So, you know, so there's some things where we have some work to do. And, you know, you all have provided a lot of great examples too. And so Abby, anything else to add before there's like 5 minutes for questions?
Yeah, just briefly, would love to talk more to anyone about the social justice warrior, because this has come up, not come up with my discussion in my courses, particularly when I'm talking about trauma-informed librarianship. When I bring up vocational or the readings, because I had a student explicitly talk about not wanting to engage with social justice. I'm just struggling with that as an educator and just as a researcher and a librarian. But that is one of my areas of reflection but what? Go. Wait. Recommend readings. All this is. I think we have like 4 minutes for questions, comments, or reflections.
I know we went by very quickly and we didn't get to dive into like all of the framework questions, but we do want you to take these framework questions and dive into them on your own or with people you deem as safe and part of your community, or even to use it as part of like if you have like a staff training or etc. To really think like literally give yourself time to think through these things as well. So thank you so much for attending our presentation.
Thank you so much, both. We do have a couple of minutes if anyone does have a quick question they want to ask. Probably best if you raise your hand and I'll unmute you. Can't see any in the chat, although it was a very, very active chat. Oh, I can see a question from Ren. Go ahead, Ren.
Hi, so I wanted to ask if you have any advice for how to start these conversations on kind of like an institutional level, like how you sort of get the ball rolling with discussing this.
That is a great question. Oh, somebody would like to have the contact slide be up again. So in terms of starting off, so start off small. So don't be like, I'm gonna go to the dean and be or director, the person in charge, and be like, we need to do this. But think about like if you have a diversity committee or accessibility or disability committee, like to bring this up. Part of it is like educating yourself, uneducating and educating yourself and others, and then looking at what are some of the low-hanging fruit that we can address. So it's not like going full throttle in and being like, we're gonna dismantle racism, sexism in like a year. Like I was a diversity, equity, inclusion librarian at the University of Florida Libraries for 2.5 years. Like I made some changes, but definitely did not dismantle racism there. So part of it is like starting small, building a community if one doesn't exist, and then gathering data and statistics. So like even though worship the written word and these things, but acknowledging like what is going to work to influence the people in power or in charge. So it could be like reputation, being like our aspirational institution is doing XYZ. Or it could be like this funding agency is funding X and like we have a community who could really benefit from this and we already have a proposal. So hopefully that answers your question, Ren.
Awesome. Thank you very much. We're just coming up on 1/4 past now. So I think I'm going to stop the